You got your book. I got the recommendation of your LinkedIn learning course. So, and here we are. So, welcome, Deirdre. Nice to meet you in person here in our STRAHLKRAFT show.
My goodness, I've been waiting for today to come. So great to be here.
So, what's the weather in New Jersey?
It's hot. It is super hot, melting hot. It's got to be about 90 degrees, and it's pretty early in the day. But you know what? I'll take it over the cold. Let's put it that way.
It's nearly 11 o'clock at your time. In Germany, we have nearly 5 o'clock p.m. So, but we have something prepared, the teaser, which is pretty funny with you because I'm going to show it. This is about STRAHLKRAFT and why you are in this show here. Let's show this.
Is it STRAHLKRAFT?
Germany, we say STRAHLKRAFT.
I love the way you say it. I don't have that same oomph. Everybody should come to STRAHLKRAFT, our live discussion, because ethics and values go with you everywhere you go. And I'm not sure people realize how much it's a personal choice and a business practice. That's the journey.
How to turn on your ethical GPS by Deirdre Breakenridge, PR and marketing goddess.
You have to determine what are your values. And some people, maybe they can't even name their values within 30 seconds. That's a little test. Can you state your values in 30 seconds or less? Almost like it's an elevator pitch.
What has STRAHLKRAFT to do with ethics?
If you want to have power, if you want relationships, if you want your superpower to come out and to build the kind of relationships and the integrity and the reputation, you will always need to rely on your ethics and values because that's what builds trust.
STRAHLKRAFT, WORDWILD life.
Everybody has to come to STRAHLKRAFT.
Yeah, that's a challenge, how to come to STRAHLKRAFT, and I loved having Deirdre here, but we have not started yet. This is just for warming up the chat here on LinkedIn or maybe on YouTube. And if you are attendee here, a participant in this show, you could just give us some information in the chat from where you are looking at this show. So Deirdre, how long did it take you to write this? I think this is his 10th or 12th or 15th book.
So it's the 7th business book, and I wrote this one with Routledge Publishing. But I do have 2 children's books with a 3rd children's book coming out. So the 3rd children's book will be number 10. But this one is actually number 7, business books.
And which book is performing better, the children's books or the business books?
Oh, so you know what? They're neck and neck. Let's put it that way. Different audiences, but they're doing pretty well, and we're just grateful that people take an interest in the stories and the learning, whether you're a child or you're a business professional.
Yeah, well, I'd like to ask you in advance before the show starts here today. Is there common ground for children's stories and business stories?
Yes, that's what's so interesting about the way that we can think and the way that I'm writing today. A lot of what I'm teaching business professionals is around emotional intelligence, being self-aware, facing fears, and a lot of the lessons and the values in business, if you think about it, where do you learn about feelings and being kind and caring and empathetic? That's in the home. So that's one of the reasons why, as I was teaching and educating through LinkedIn Learning, and I do a lot of training with professionals all around the world, my husband and I decided, you know what, why not take some of these lessons and turn them into a children's story? And thus our series was launched.
Do you have a children's story for me, a short one today?
Well, it's a little bit of a longer story. We're definitely going to dive into that ethical GPS and the power of the pause, but it's no different than a child learning how to be kind and caring with other members of the family. So,
This is about education today. So we have 5 o'clock p.m. in Germany and 11 o'clock in New Jersey. You're welcome, and I think we're gonna start now here with our intro. And here we go, Deirdre, how to turn on your ethical GPS. Your what is this GPS? What is GPS standing for? Global Positioning System, a system from the United States. Is there something like a global positioning system for ethics which is valid throughout the world?
well, I think it starts from within. So it's that gut feeling that you have, that's your inner. It's an inner GPS. That's what I'm hoping that people tap into when they think about ethics and values. It's a personal choice and a business practice, and you have to tune into your own guiding system. It's really important.
Your own guiding system. In our teaser, you said it's a little bit difficult for most of the people just to name their personal values in 30 seconds. What are your personal values in 30 seconds?
So I'm glad you're testing me. It's honesty. I mean, if we're not honest with each other, then how do we build relationships? I believe in trust in relationships, and that shouldn't be broken. Respect for one another and hearing different perspectives, patience, and caring and kindness. So those are some of my values for a 30-second challenge. And I challenge all of you to do that as well, because if you can't identify your beliefs and ideals, then you may go into situations and just morph into something that may not be right for you. You always want to align your own personal choices with what you do in business.
So the GPS project was started by the US Department of Defense in 1973. Is an ethical GPS necessary to defend my personal or my corporate brand? So is it a question of defense?
Well, you could look at it that way. I think it's a lot proactive when you're tuning into your ethical GPS, but at the same time, when you're challenged with situations, you might feel there's such a, it's incongruent that you may feel on the defense, that you want to be able to put your own values forward. And one of the biggest things here is that when it comes to ethics and values and feeling that alignment, each and every one of us has to be tuned in to ourselves. We have to be calm. And that's why I talk a lot about set your level to calm before you try to make any decisions. And that's really important. It's hard to be calm today.
Yeah, it's pretty hard, even when stakes are high. So there are lots of rules. You have to obey laws when you're a CEO, when you are a managing director. You have compliance rules and you have morals. So how to set up this whole set of rules in a company, and why do especially marketers have to obey them?
Okay, so there are definitely, all of our companies have values and they want ethical conduct, and we understand that. So we all want to do good, do no harm, and I think we all set out to do the right thing. But think about what goes on in a day, the pressures, the deadlines, the goals that need to be set, sometimes the corners that get cut to get the job done when you're under pressure. When there's so many messages that you're bombarded with, whether you're in the marketing department or you're the CEO of the company or you're anyone.
Especially in the marketing department, it's I think the first room before hell every day. So just to be aligned with CEOs, with lines of business, and everybody wants to be seen. So for marketers especially, they need an own plan, but in practice very often they have no time to follow their personal strategy and the line. Is it a wrong assumption from me, or is it reality?
Well, it is reality when we're rushing to get whatever communication out. However, that's where you have to, if you're unsure, if there is a question, if something doesn't set right with you, you have to take a pause. And that is one thing when you think about your ethics and the conduct that's going to result. Do you have a system in place? Are you able to, when you need to, pause, ask more questions, get more thinking? So think about, you have your own system and heuristics and ways of simple thinking to get to certain outcomes. There's outside systems that you want to tap into, so you're not making choices alone. And then when you're making decisions, it's also, there's two different kinds of ways to look at ethics. Are you making decisions based on deontological, which is duty-based? Is it teleological, which is more utilitarian, the do more good for more people? Understanding your decision-making, that really helps regardless of who you are within your company. But yes, a lot does fall on the marketing department and the public relations professionals, because they're the ones who are the handlers and handling the communication.
So, as a marketer, you are a marketer too. You are a PR and marketing goddess. This is what I tell
Thank you.
everybody. But are you something like a moral police officer in a company then when you are a marketer?
Well, I think everybody should be a moral police officer. But yes, so you take on a role of communication, and because you are sharing, you get the megaphone, and whether you're getting other members of your company out there on social media, or you're sharing on social media, maybe you're doing broadcast, you're in a position to further a message. And that's where you want to be really careful. At the end of the day, you want to make sure that your company has its reputation, and you yourself have taken the high road. You have your integrity intact because you do what you believe is ethical conduct.
Ethical conduct is the word. So Kirk Hazlitt is asking a question, or bringing in some comment. Thanks for that, Kirk. Ethics, doing the right thing for the right reason. The golden rule: do unto others as you would have them do unto you. So this is the
absolutely. Kirk is somebody who I highly respect in ethics. Kirk is a professor. And it's true. It's the do no harm and always doing right by others. And that makes you think about all the different ways that companies are communicating to audiences. It's the internal stakeholders, it's the external public. And when you make a decision, all the CEOs and C-level executives, you can look at an outcome, but if it's a complex system, then look at the different parts and think how those parts, based on your decision, will interact and what will happen. Go deeper in the system to really look at what's going to play out as a result of your communication.
So, Deirdre, what do you say is the main goal of ethical leadership, and why does everybody have to think about much deeper than ever?
I think it's because ethical leadership means so much more than your plaque on the wall and coming up with words that you put in a handbook. It is demonstrating the beliefs, how they play out in your conduct. You can't say one thing and do another. You always want to do the right thing, especially when people aren't looking. And I think with leaders, it's also important to have conversations, because sometimes things that are left undefined, that leaves room for decisions to be made that might not be the best decisions when people are under pressure, or when they think no one is looking and they're trying to reach some sort of quota or goal.
Yeah. So we talked about that. So there's lots of pressure for leaders, for CEOs, and so on every day. And your recommendation was to stay calm. How to stay calm? Just go in meditation during business days, or what do you recommend there?
Okay, so setting your level to calm. This is not something, let's hope that during some issue or crisis, you're not just deciding to set your level to calm. That means incorporating it into your lifestyle. Yes, it could be just simple breathing techniques. It could be deeper meditation. It could be visualization. It could be done through walking in nature, getting back to nature. You might
Do you,
be journaling.
do you do that every day, or every morning? Are you doing meditation, yoga, or what are you doing on your own?
So every single morning, and it always depends when my first meeting is, I make sure that I meditate for 30 minutes, which does wonders. It does. It really helps. When you meditate, it keeps you in the front part of your brain, your rational thinking center. And that means that the emotional center, the amygdala, doesn't take over under pressing situations. So I'm really careful. And when I teach executives just how to breathe, the value is staying in the front part of your brain, the prefrontal cortex. That alone really helps when things are going on. But I also, in addition to the meditating, I read every single morning. I love to read. I read again at night. I'm reading Einstein, a book on Einstein by Walter Isaacson. I'm also reading Abundance by Peter Diamandis and Stephen Kotler. So reading takes you into learning and calms you down. I do journaling in the morning, but I do my exercise later in the day. And that's
When do
usually
you,
swimming on these hot days.
when do you write one of your 100 books?
So that's just a little bit of how I set my level to calm. And anybody can do it. I work with lawyers, technologists, software engineers, people who are under high pressure. Some say, but I feel like I'm a little ADHD. I can't meditate. I teach them techniques to incorporate drawing into breathing so that they
Yeah,
can focus.
it's absolutely amazing. What are you not doing? So, PR and marketing goddess, which is teaching engineers better breathing. It's incredible. So, Sherry has some greetings in here. Hi, Sherry. Nice to meet you. Greetings from Burrell, Worldwide, Beverly Hills. And Jennifer Faith is writing great discussion, but my battery is low. We'll have to watch on replay. So, good point here. So very often the battery is low on energy during the day for leaders. So let's come back to that. So we have to think a little bit about self-leadership, about company or corporate leadership, and employee leadership. These are three dimensions of leadership. When you think in terms of ethics, are there any differences between those levels?
That's a really good question. I address that in my book, and it's almost everybody has to have ethics incorporated into their day. There has to be education around ethics. There have to be touch points, training. So all levels of leadership need it. But I did go out on a limb to say that executives and higher levels of leadership need more trainings for the trickle down effect, that the situations have to be tougher. They have to be challenged more. They need more education and continuing education. Because after all, how do you get to a position of leading an entire company and taking on that responsibility if you are not the top leader in the ethics and values department? So I was a little tougher on the higher level, but it will trickle down, and everybody needs to be tested and then up their game as they move up the ladder.
And this, I think, needs training all the time. Kirk is bringing in this wonderful comment also to deal with the ongoing pressures. You really have to have someone you can turn to and ask, is it me or is the entire world going nuts? Is the whole entire world going nuts? Good question, Kirk. So what do you say, dear?
Well, Kirk, you make good point. You always have to have somebody to ask, because as much as we talk about trusting your inner ethics, GPS value system, it's important to go to those knowing individuals around you that you trust and who can help you make choices. I am a firm believer, and I know that sometimes when I have a knee-jerk reaction and I make a choice on my own earlier in my career, didn't work out as well. Every choice is compounded. Make a good choice, it can be compounded better and better and better. Make a bad choice, it gets worse. But when I ask people that I trust, and Kirk is somebody who I trust, I would clearly ask him if there was something around the ethics and value and issue going on. So I ask all of you, who do you trust? Who do you go to? Who do you feel comfortable with? Because when you get a mentor, and I did a video on this, we really don't say to that mentor, are you ethical? What do you value? Because sometimes we feel like it's baked in. But getting to know people on that level helps you to connect, and then they'll end up helping you in a way that really suits you.
So especially when you're in a moral dilemma or in a conflict, I think it is pretty important to have a mentor like that. So to somebody you can talk with. So many leaders, let's talk about transparency. Many leaders have difficulties in sharing with transparency, sharing their ideas, their thoughts, their values. Why is that?
I think it's always, if you're running a company, you're answering to your shareholders, your board, you have the public to deal with, there's the media component of it. It's difficult in an age of social conversations because things are taken out of context so much. So you say something, and if it's taken out of context, it ends up all over social media, and then you have a firestorm on your hands. So that makes people.
You say, is this interesting? You say firestorm. In Germany, we say shitstorm.
There you go. It's a shitstorm. I think they're identical.
Is it identical, but you wouldn't say that? Or is it you say firestorm? It's interesting.
Oh, I would say shitstorm.
You would say shitstorm. Okay.
It pretty much is.
Back to the problems.
So the question is, when you go and you're about to share, let's say you have a media interview, you always want to be transparent in the way that you can be accurate, in a way that you can share what is going to help the people who are listening and who will benefit. If you have information that's harmful and that can't be shared, well, then there is a reason. You'll always, if somebody is questioning you and you're not able to share information because it's actually harmful to the groups you serve, you can be transparent in the sense that you can say, I don't have that information right now. When it's available, I will certainly share with you. So I think it's really important to remember in this day and age of media that transparency, yes, accuracy, yes, what you can share, what makes sense for people, for timing, it's a do no harm approach. You can't go wrong there.
So did you look at this jury, this court's broadcasting about Johnny Depp's case? Of certainly you did, and Amber Heard.
Yes, I did.
What was it that you learned from this? This hard fight in public, just in with ethical marketing in the background.
Well, I looked at it from a body language perspective, so I am very interested in aligning voice, verbal, the words you use, with your body language. So when I was studying, I was looking at it from a standpoint of, is this comfortable? Is this uncomfortable? What looks like truth? What looks like deception? And I think what we can gather from all of this is that there is always his truth, her truth, and somewhere in between. We see a volatile relationship, but at the end of the day, it is in the court of public opinion, and it very much played out on social media. And you can see hashtags and the support around Johnny Depp. But for me, strictly, I looked at it from body language and what were they telling me, and then what did I walk away with as a result.
This is interesting because what we say is a percentage between what is dominating. Is the body language dominating over the verbal communications, or is it not? Is it how would you define that?
So you can talk as much as you want, and you can say anything you want. Your body will show how you really feel. This is what I teach in my Influential Communicators course. The aligning of the voice, your verbal fluency, and your body language actually creates confidence in people. And that's where, if the body language piece, if your body is moving in certain ways, and it's clusters of discomfort, people will walk away and say, oh, she's not telling the truth. Well, they might hear the words, but they'll still say, oh, I don't believe that. That has a lot to do with your subconscious and the body language that you're seeing.
This is pretty amazing that you say that, because it brings the idea up. So when I think with my neocortex here about ethical standards that I set up in a dashboard or something like that, but it's not aligned with my inner how to say my inner position.
Yes.
So when what I'm living, and then I get this body language that is like that. So saying that and communicating on the other hand the double message that is not understandable or is irritating. Is that what you mean?
So it comes out in your head movement. Let me give you a perfect example. Somebody can be trying to convince you of something, saying how great their course is, but they're shaking their head no. That sends the person watching a signal that says, wait, you want me to believe you, but as you're stating what's good for me, your head is saying no. People will sit, they'll start upright, and then all of a sudden they'll start turtling back. That turtling is a sense of retreat. When shoulders start moving up, that's uncertainty. When people have shoulder pops or double shrugs, what does that say? When they're speaking, that says, I don't know what I'm talking about. Now, one thing is not an absolute. There are people who will say, oh, she touched her nose. That doesn't mean anybody's lying or being deceitful. But if you're touching your nose, shrugging your shoulders, putting up barriers, drinking, and maybe crossing your legs and crossing your arms, that's a cluster. There's a barrier.
You think like that.
Something isn't right, and
Yeah.
you have to determine what does that all mean.
Yeah, the defocus and defocusing is a bad idea. So thanks, Kirk, for your comment is here. So glad you're emphasizing transparency, Deirdre. It's truly the guideline to ethical communication on all levels. This is the point where I can make some advertorial for this LinkedIn course from Deirdre, https t1p.de/ethical marketer, and you're landing directly. I can show you maybe. Just show this screen here for a moment. This is just this course where you can have this idea and using ethics in course marketing, and lots of chapters starting with your employees, defining your marketing ethics, identifying problem areas. This is a pretty good course here. Is it for free, Deirdre?
So we did run this I'm sure at some point for free, but this is a paid course depending on your subscription to LinkedIn. So, but thank you so much for sharing it. It's an interesting course that gets you thinking beyond your marketing department. Yes, ethics are in the marketing department, but how do you get a marketing culture throughout your organization? That's what's really important. So, just like anything, you want ethics to be a part of the fabric of the company and in the DNA. And that goes far beyond the marketing department.
Is a moral demand from you to companies? And do you have the idea that everybody's following, or is there a lack of ethic fabric in many companies?
It's so hard to say with all of the companies out there. I think there's many good people who sometimes don't do the right thing, but at the end of the day, there's a lesson. There are folks who are not compliant on purpose, but maybe rules aren't defined clearly enough. There's so many different examples. But rather than picking apart and trying to find all the bad that's out there, if we could all focus on what we need to do and start incorporating and building it up and doing it from the top down and getting our executives really to demonstrate, I think we'll all be a lot better.
Do you sometimes get the question from CEOs, for example, what is the ROI of those investments in setting up an ethical standard catalog, for example?
So I've never had that particular question, but it comes in bits and pieces. And the ROI is the fact that you keep your reputation and your bottom line intact. Because when you do the wrong thing and it plays out, think about some of the mishaps with organizations out there. It's not just one action that leads to something that happens in the market. Yes, it's that, but look what happens to your employees when leadership doesn't do the right thing. You get low morale, you get people exiting, you get a loss of great talent. It's very difficult to be productive. There's so many ways missteps are going to affect an organization. So I think that we all have to keep that in mind as we move forward.
So you're working with people who have violated laws and rules and even haven't been incarcerated after violating morals and laws. So could you tell us a little bit from your experience? How can you build up a reputation after an event like that?
Well, I'm glad you asked that because one of my favorite clients and colleagues is somebody who learned through unfortunate actions. And that's Richard Bizstrong, who is now somebody who is compliant and who speaks about what happened to him as a former sales executive and some of the choices that he made violating FCPA laws and anti-bribery. He was incarcerated, but now his trajectory is completely different. He works with the largest companies in the world to help them to make the right decisions. And with executives, he works with governing bodies, ethical governing bodies. And I think at the end of the day, good people can make wrong decisions, learn lessons. It's about changing your trajectory, wanting to do the right thing, demonstrating it, and in Richard's case, teaching it and showing people through those lessons what the consequences can be and how to make better and right choices.
So everybody can serve as an example how to do it not. So in the worst case.
Yes. And you know what? If you were in a position like myself, when someone comes to you and says, I need your help with my reputation, and Richard said, please Google me. I want you to know everything about me. I read the court transcripts. I read what the prosecutor recommended, what the judge said, to make a determination that this was somebody that I wanted to help and to move forward with how he was going to educate and
sometimes
help people today.
It's pretty hard when you're reading something about yourself, your personal brand in public in Google, and what is a possibility just to step into this process? So first, you said it is just to set up your frame in another way, just to acknowledge that you have violated those rules, maybe, but not all the time. The problem is very often when you're in a dilemma and you have moral standards that are in conflict with other moral standards. What do I do then?
Setting up your framework is really important, but I think it's also what are the themes? What can you move forward with that makes sense, that you can tackle, that you want to bring forward? And what is it that you know you're going to leave in the rear view mirror when you're rebuilding, let's say, your reputation? Whenever you're making decisions and doing the right thing, we talked about considering all parts. And in Richard's case, realizing that choices should not be made alone. That's one of the things that he wrote about in my book. He wrote the foreword to Answers for Ethical Marketers, but that's something that all of you can think about. That, are you making choices alone?
Your book, just you could hold it in the camera just so we can see. This is the book, Answers for Ethical Marketers. You can buy it in via Amazon, or where do I buy that? You can write to Deirdre. You can send her a direct message via LinkedIn, of course. But I have another question. So, is there a group on LinkedIn where ethical marketers can meet in the moment? Is it founded? Do you have some recommendation there?
So I don't have a group for ethical marketers, but if you take the Building an Ethical Culture course in LinkedIn, then you become a part of a group and students can ask questions. I always answer in there. But if anybody wants to talk about ethical marketing, how to become the ethical marketer, why we all need to be ethical marketers, I am always happy to chat on LinkedIn. I'm also on Twitter at Deirdre Breakenridge. It's an important discussion. And as I said before, if we're not talking about it, sometimes what goes unsaid are the problem areas.
Yeah, so great recommendations, great advice by Deirdre Breakenridge. It has been a great show. I love to have you in this show, Deirdre. So what are your next steps in ethical marketing? What is the next move?
Well, I think the next move will always be continuing to help business professionals set their level to calm. I can't stress enough how important it is to find clarity and focus, because that alone, and somebody said about the low battery, if you can set your level to calm, you'll have much more energy. A lot of our energy comes out in the form of stress. So I'm going to do my part there, get everybody aligned, voice, verbal, nonverbal, and that'll help with better decision making. And you can share your stories with trust and all the values that you have.
Yeah, it sounds nice, Deirdre, but in reality, sometimes it's a little bit tougher. So when we think of a war in Ukraine and the conflict between China, Russia, and America, or the NATO, it sometimes bringing in news all the day that are very negative, and there's a big impact. Many companies, so what do I do then when I have ethical standards? I want to be there for my employees. I want to run my business in a better way. And sometimes the world is changing so abruptly that I feel like a loser when I stay with my ethical standards. What do I do then?
So here's the thing: be there, right? Be there for your employees, which means being present and being aware, thus the calm. Yes, there is bad news all around us. You can't escape it. But if you let it overwhelm you, how does that help to be a part of the solution? When you're in the problem and you're so upset and overwhelmed, you can't get to the solution. And there is a fear mindset, and being a part of the mass fear, the mass consciousness on that level, that's not going to solve it. If we can all stay clear and be there, then we have a better opportunity through focus, through what we do in our decisions, through the tools and the technology and what we have at our disposal to be better and to hopefully move toward a positive outcome. Will all these things continue to happen? Yes, but it's still better to not be in that fear mindset.
Brings me to the question what I should do when I'm propaganda chief, for example, for Putin or for Biden. So very difficult discussion we could lead on another show, but not today. Thanks a lot. Thanks 1,000 times for Deirdre for being here, for telling us about your new book, how to turn on your ethical GPS. No, the book title is Answers for Ethical Marketers, of course. This is the book, here is it. I love this advice, and I really recommend this LinkedIn course by Deirdre, and I'm going to send the links. You could find the link to this course in our comments after the show. Thanks for joining us. My name is Detlef. It's a great show today, and take care. Looking forward to your next advice and your next course and your next book. Deirdre, I love you.
Thank you so much. Love you too. And thank you everyone for being here. Thanks a lot.